Hey guys! Alright, so we're back again, ladies and gents, with Beer 101. This time we're going to be talking about beer styles and recommendations. We're going to start off where we should, on the first page. Alright, so this is where a majority of your first time drinkers are going to come in. They're going to want Coors Light, Michelob Ultra, you know. Um, so first thing we want to do is understand why they like these beers. They're low in sugars, low in a malt base, almost a non-existent hop base. The reason we, let me rephrase this. So I talked last video about the brewing process, and a lot of the lack of sugars comes from the type of malt they use. We have a lot of rice and corn in this section. Rice and corn are used in almost every macro lager, Budweiser, Bud Light, Miller Lite, all of those are going to use corn and rice and a little bit of a real malt. But for the most part, they're going to use this corn and this rice, and it's really not going to do much for the flavor. There's not a lot of the enzymes to work with. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to add a lot of hot water, which is going to kill most of the enzymes that they would have. Um, so they're left with a lower sweet base. Um, there's not a lot of hops added, and the that are added are typically considered noble hops. Noble hops don't have as much beta acids. They have very light beta acids and very aromatic alpha acids. They're going to be added for a short amount of time at the end of the boil, and this is going to allow for a very small amount of the beta acids to work off and the alpha acids to be there and provide the majority of your hop note, which is just going to be a very light aromatic. Nothing's really done to the malts at the beginning of the process, so you don't have a malt or a smoke or a roasted base. You just have your normal malt. It's what leaves it with that light flavor or that light color. Um, a majority of these beers are also lower in alcohol. There's not as much malt base, not as much sugar. The yeast doesn't have as much to convert into alcohol. They use lager yeast for the most part. And as far as taste is concerned, we talked about the difference in brewing in the last video, but as far as taste is concerned, your main difference in your two yeasts are your top fermenting or your ale yeast is going to give you a more crisp finish, whereas your lager yeast, your bottom fermenting yeast, is going to give you a more of a smooth finish. And that's how most people will uh, denote the difference in the flavor they taste. So that's why they like these beers. Light beers, low hop. Most of your hop note comes from the alpha acid. There's a very simple malt base with not a lot of enzymes, and there's a lot of hot water added that kills off those enzymes. These beers just don't have a lot of flavor. Um, there's really no way you can break it down to a customer other than that. Like, we can find you another beer, but all of these beers are going to be more or less similar. Like there's not a lot of flavor to give one a huge advantage over the other. A lot of them are in a better balance or are purposely off balance to set them apart. So let's talk about a couple of those. As far as those that are purposefully off balanced to give them a noticeable effect, we've got my favorite example right now is Hans Pilsner from Real Ale. What they've done is they've taken a traditional Pilsner. We'll go into what makes traditional Pilsners and stuff like this in another video about beer history. Right now, we're just going to talk about the flavors and recommendation. But they've taken a Pilsner and they've added more hops to it. So they've thrown it off balance, but it gives it a note that defines it from the rest of this category. If somebody is looking for an alternative to something light, I would throw this in for like the third taster. Try this one last. It's a little different, but it's similar to what you like, and I think you might like it. Another one is Firestone's Pivo Pilsner. Any of these hoppy Pilsners, they will be uh, blanketly marketed as that because they're looking for a niche, are a good one to offer for your third one. I would say Pivo Pilsner, Hans Pilsner, and Freestyle Pilsner from Santa Fe would be the three big ones. Hans probably has the most upfront hop note. I feel like Freestyle's probably the most enjoyable with the smoothest finish, but all three of those would be good third samples. I typically like to give people samples in sets of threes. The first one I would go with is something that's going to be a little more what they're looking for. If they are looking for, let's say, a Kurz Original or a Budweiser, a full flavored lager, I would try to get them like a Lobo lager. That one's got a lot of flavor in it. It's really, really good. If they were looking for Red Stripe, if somebody comes in looking for Red Stripe, get them a longboard. If somebody is coming in looking for, let's say, your typical Coors Light, Lone Star, stuff like that, everyone's going to say go to lawnmower, but I would go for lawnmower for my second one. That's going to be what I would consider my crowd pleasers. My first one's going to be a direct recommendation, my second one's going to be a crowd pleaser, and then my third one is going to be something a little off the wall, but still fits what they're looking for. So Lobo Lager for a full flavored lager. The Lakewood Rock Rider is another one good for full flavored lagers rather. For your crowd pleasers, Lawnmower. Uh, it is a Kolsch, meaning it has ale yeast, but it's brewed at and fermented for a longer and cooler period of time. This affects the beer in a way that makes it palatable for both ale drinkers and lager drinkers. It's still light and not overly sweet and doesn't have a huge hop base. Kolsch's are great for that. Lawnmower is the best Kolsch we have, in my opinion. You could also send them to 561 from Rabbit Hole, or you can send them with a blonde ale. Blonde ales are going to be another good crowd pleaser. They're going to bridge the gap between your ale drinkers and your lager drinkers, and it's going to give everybody the light flavor that they're looking for on your first page. Dallas Blonde. Dallas Blonde's your big one. Send them to Dallas Blonde, and they shouldn't be not happy. Dallas Blonde is a great one to go for. You can also send them to some of the more traditional Pilsners. I'm talking like Scrimshaw, nothing that we talked about for the third one, or any of our sweet Kolsches that might be in season. Rogue Honey Kolsch we do almost every year. There are plenty of other ones you can send them on. So that's what I'm giving y'all today. What we have is recommendations for lighter beer drinkers on our first page and why they like those beers and what you're looking for as far as their palate. If you can get in the head mindset of your beer drinker and understand their palate, you're going to be able to recommend stuff to them that much better. So that's all I've got for y'all today. We'll hit you next time, and we'll move on to the next page, which is my favorite. We get to go to hoppier beers, and then we'll do darker beers, and then we'll probably do 2 videos on the back page talking about the foreign beers and fruitier beers. Foreign beers in and of themselves get a little tricky, so I would like to separate them off from our fruitier beers, and we might throw in like a little small tidbit section for seasonals, because I don't think the fruity beers are going to take that long. See y'all next time.